Chile here with Sirius Talis Moon Soul Hour Mars Day. Mars is 2020 in Capricorn. The moon is about to ingress to the 22 degree. By the way, the moon is on the Chiron of the State of Israel, and today I wake up to an article that exposes it's basically one of three ladies that got acknowledged by the state as a victim of human trafficking. By the way, to people that escape human trafficking, which means also people that were targeted and escaping the traffickers, worldwide they deserve diplomatic immunity. That means if they have to steal, it's not for committing, crime without to commit crime without getting away with that. Unfortunately, the secret societies love to recruit, but they do rape. So they rape the recruitees, and I addressed that previously when it comes to those echelons, but the people that escape, they have full diplomatic immunity. I know that not all law enforcement and authority are lawful, but in that case, you can remind them that they are committing a crime against humanity, which is punishable by death. So, human trafficking is basically crime against humanity, both because it was meant to instigate crimes against humanity. The way I got to talk about human trafficking was because I tended to political assassination prevention, and to actually prevent assassination, that would be entailing abolishing child abuse, ritual abuse, and extortion cults on either side of the gun, let's say. And and the chain of supply, let's put it that way, of the assassination. Um, so I'm gonna have and so with this moon Chiron, we have basically a lady, Arel, some Edna Arel, something like that, that was it kind of like a Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was running. Basically, it's not brothels because brothels can give us the connotation that that is a job. Okay, trafficking is not a job. You don't. The people may go to a job interview and be trafficked, but trafficking per se is not a job. Um, and what would happen is that these people would be trafficked, and they would be sitting. There were about 52 such places in Israel, basically where they would kidnap people, torture them until they regress to child state. And this is where the energy reading today, but I'm going to address it in a minute. And they would traffic these people. So one of three ladies that managed to escape, and by the way, they also tried to traffic me as well. To that, they tried to make me religious. If you see the last pictures in Spirit of Matter on YouTube, um, where they tried to make me religious, they tried to do that in 2007. One of the most secular people that you're probably known, and this is a place that's sitting also in Bnei Brak, which is Haredi Jewish, Orthodox Jewish city in Israel. Like I said, they use the religious institutions, much like Anya Wick says, they're not really practicing the religions that they say that they're practicing, kind of like the churches that declared empathy a sin. Okay, shout out to Parkrose Permaculture. I think she was the one that exposed that. Um, that article, okay, that a church declares empathy a sin. And if you think about what they try to depict as the spirit of Christ and those type of rulings, we understand that those are only human trafficking. And Moon on the Chiron of the State of Israel basically exposes that. All the while we are looking for Haymanut, and I think I have two more episodes about Haymanut coming, and the connection to the Orthodox religion, to the use of Orthodox religion infrastructure, the wealth consolidation on natural resources, using trafficked children and adults that they torture to regression to a child state. So that's That's hitting Israel today because Moon is on the Chiron of Israel. And we have the stellium in Capricorn being in the land of Israel, the people of Israel, with Saturn, the natal Saturn of Israel in the 11th house. And so we see this big scandal being exposed. We can imagine that during the war, there were a lot of trafficking and trafficking attempts, both in Palestine and in Israel. Many cases, those are Israelis that run Palestinian trafficking. Okay. Um, for example, psychologists, welfare, all the infrastructure, basically using the Arabic citizens, even the Blue ID Arabic citizens, as proxies, depriving them of job opportunities as they do when targeting individuals, torture them, and then make them attack with full hatred on the people that they traffic. Again, it's one method, it's not all the methods, but we would not have 7th of October without infiltration of trafficking and extortion cults. Don't rape, then there won't be genocide. Very simply put, um, just like we would not see ICE without people calling it satanic panic when the first brave testimonies arrived, because how do you think they train the ICE soldiers and the ICE armed forces, um, if not in those basically ways? So people that escape human trafficking, what they are declaring is one thing and one thing only: we are not willing to commit crimes against humanity. They could get full diplomatic immunity within those cult sectors, but they will have to do crimes against humanity. Traffickers worked with the Nazis, okay? Ronnie Sadovnik Kaloni, damn, I need to I need to see how she this morning. Um yeah. So, no. Okay. There we have, it was a parliament member and his spouse that have been known to, at least the parliament member have been known to rape women in his workplace. And his spouse, he tried to say that they were drinking their blood. Sounds like a bloodletting ritual to me. They owned also the media. So Silvan Shalom was a parliament member, and they owned also the media. Judy near Moses Shalom, near Moses also belonging to media. Again, if we go to the Epstein cartel, they owned the media. Um, yes, I was. They were living in a neighborhood next to us in Ramat Gan. Their children actually were students of mine in filmmaking, but not that they needed me to do filmmaking. They had parents, but in high school, what would they take? So they took filmmaking. Um, I don't know them personally, so but the thing is not that those, it just happened to be, I just said it because it happened to be an article that's exposed, but I talked about the fact that those are the rituals. It is a global problem. It's not an Israel problem. Do not be fooled to think that it's not happening the same in Palestine. Um, Okay, Mama Taliban's would not be back in Gaza. When I look at Randa's videos or people from Gaza that broadcast and suddenly go buy a tent, and I'm like, that tent probably did not choose to be like that. It was not always winter. And how's the tent doing? Well, they can't say it, and it's not just Israel. If they could, it would probably look like the ladies in Iran, but so would it in Bnei Brak, Israel. And that's basically after Israel was uh, trying to paint a certain picture as though the world doesn't care about the feminists of Iran, and where are all the people that cry free Palestine. and so on and so forth. Um, I think we both saw that Trump wanting to bomb Iran, and that's how I got to do the chart of Iran. So it's not like the world is not hearing about Iran. As per protests, the Americans are busy with ICE, the British are busy with digital ID, um, and the Europeans are busy trying to make babies soon enough to not go to war. Another thing that happens today is Somaliland uh, accepts an offer by Benjamin Netanyahu to basically include into it the Palestinian people from Gaza um, in return for being acknowledged as a country. Again, I think any country that would need to be acknowledged, if we understand that sovereign countries is a necessity more than it is an enterprise. So any country that would need that as a necessity to not be genocided, for example, would see it as, well, we can shelter the people that were, according to the UN, genocided. And you know my geopolitical situation that I need to address it as per the UN. Um, which says enough. Again, genocide cannot happen without child and human trafficking in both countries. And we still don't know where Haymanut was, knowing very well that um, basically the only way that she would not be found when she goes into a welfare center and the film is being erased when she comes out is one reason and one reason only, and the name Peter rings probably rings a bell. Those Peter rings, as these children become adult, become trafficking rings, and that's basically what people call sex work. So, on a political level, it means that the people who still believe that there is such thing as sex work and that sex work is work, they should not be surprised if the brown shirts kidnap their children to these jobs. Um, but to prevent that, I make this episode raising awareness. This is the Chiron. The Chiron is on the Mars sign, is in Scorpio. It's in the second house of Israel, which basically means the income, a wound around the income of Israel. And we see basically sex trafficking rings serving as an active income, not a passive income of Israel, which basically denotes that Israel actively correlated with any leadership. Okay, the Mars is in Leo natally for Israel, and with the people that cooperate, because Mars right now is in the fourth house of Israel to traffic children and individuals. Basically, we see it as an astrologer. We see that um, the infiltration of, and even the foundation of the country was already infiltrated. And why am I saying infiltrated? Not because I don't speak against my country, but because any sovereign country will need to face the fact that if it's founded upon human trafficking, they're gonna know. It's gonna matter. It's gonna cause perpetual war to the country. It basically means that the country exists as a state of Mein Kampf for its children and trafficked people. Okay? And it's on the country to acknowledge them as they acknowledge this lady that was trafficked by Israelis within Israel, going through 52 places where they would traffic the women in Bnei Barak city, orthodox cities. So that's a big national scandal. As a person that tends to political assassination and prevention, I cannot prevent political assassination when that dumb fuckery exists in a country. No, seriously, the ratio of just how many people are being trafficked, how many potential. I did manage to prevent one surefire assassination attempt. I'm not going to address that right now. Um, okay? And but because it was from the same village, but that, and that was me being diligent. So that person get assassination threats. Then another person, let's say David Icke, was exposing. I said, what are you exposing? What is there? It's not the only person in the web. And then I see another thing and another thing. And I see, oh, that person was in the rituals with that person with some age gap. And then I can basically I tend to ritual abuse prevention, and I get to know about the structure of those things. They threaten the survivor, somehow manage to neutralize that. And I know because they don't take the, how should I say that? Unless you're advocating for minorities, they don't take the BIPOC and the minorities to assassin. They take the person with the same, that coming from the same village. And when it comes to the policing forces, all these things are supposed to protect, okay, the public figure from, let's say, testimonies, is difficult for me when I come to tend to prevent their political assassination. For example, the different case where they were demonstrating for the kidnapped people, I had to leave a demonstration for the kidnapped people because I saw they were talking about Bibi, Bibi, Bibi. Those things, in Israel, we know when they actually want to get something done, they say it's apolitical. And they keep it apolitical, which they didn't. That's why it took 2 years to return the kidnapped people. And then I hear behind the funding is Ehud Barak, that we know rubbed shoulders with Epstein, and said that he slept with 12, 13 years old, I think it was girls, but he also do that to boys. And he said he just doesn't see anything wrong about this. Okay, and when that's behind, and again, if it's true, because we don't actually have the possibility to check it's true, so structurally I see that it's not impossible. In fact, it might even be impossible to have a demonstration to return the kidnapped people that were trafficked there in Gaza without an insider from the trafficking cult. Okay, which basically mean in that case Ehud Barak, and or be like, okay, that basically they were needed to return the kidnapped people. And so and so in that case, when people say we know it's Ehud Barak behind the demonstrations and we know that he was rubbing shoulders with Epstein, then they can tend to certain things more openly. And I can say, well, if Ehud Barak wants to have an attempt against Benjamin Netanyahu, then we should follow the money of all these things, but first and foremost, return the kidnapped people. Um, that's the moon. Okay, Mars 22 in. Again, we talk about the long-term implication, which means political assassination. Okay. Also for people that think they go to sex work, or even people think they watch porn. You don't watch porn. Porn watches you. Porn has handlers. These handlers later have targeted individuals. Okay, I'm trying to go for the cases that are the most naive, because the common person was not spending time at the Epstein Island, but and we're continuously marketed. And now I get to an energy reading. So for that energy reading, I'm gonna lay the disclaimer there. They don't traffic people. They torture people to the point of regression to child state and traffic those children, whether they are in adult body or not. Like I said, awareness is, this is also why they torture them. They make them susceptible to mind control by bringing them to an infantile nervous system state. Thinking that satanic panic ends up with ice. That's the truth. I cannot make it. And I'm not saying it as shame as blame. Most of the people that are tending to ice, either they have families, or probably the only reasons they are still in the states because they have families and they have community, and they try to see what can they do for the community within the place that they are. Most of them have been. I was in high school during the what they called satanic panic. Um, it didn't seem unfeasible that people sacrifice, let's say, animals and stuff like that. But I wasn't. I was in high school. Okay, well, I wasn't thinking about it. But the people that called it satanic panic back then, I'm not talking about the youth. Okay, I'm talking about, and even if people back then called it satanic panic, at least now connecting the dots is preventative measures, because it's all funded by classified projects and requiring for transparency around classified projects. For example, in Israel, would be exposing all the 52 places this pseudonym Dana, that was acknowledged as trafficking victim by the state, is basically dealing with. Um, and so the energy reading goes like this. It has something to, somebody was trying to, uh, somebody was trying to be sexual with someone that's either a child, or I'm getting that this was an adult person in their child state. Okay, that person was basically in their inner child state. And somebody was trying to be like sexual with them, and they were rejecting that person, and that person got mad and then tried to put it as that they only wanted sex or something of that sort, while they were dealing with a child, and that exposed that that person was also treated that way when they were a child, or that they have a child self that's sometimes treated by this way by others. Um, Very, very disturbing. And then that person insisting that that person wasn't a child. Falken, they don't, the only, how should I say that? This was about people interpreting the erotic rejection that they get from people that are basically in their child state. They are not erotic at all right now. Okay, they're getting into completely not adult, but non-erotic phase where they enter their child state. And they perceive the rejection from these adult people as something that triggers stuff in them, and then they try to say that they are, or they see sex as something that is of rape nature, like in the rituals and rites, and they don't have the ability to make love, basically. And they project it on people that are very well and attuned, that they have a child state. They weren't even rejecting that person. They were just in the child state, was completely non-erotic state. And they had a hard time accepting that. And that was the energy. It was like, no, you weren't a child. You weren't a child. It was like you try to tell a person who they are. And that was pretty much the energy reading. Um, So much so that even from the child state, they were like, well, if you try to tell me who I am, let me tell you who you are. A war criminal that should be dead. is And this was a very challenging kind of energy reading, um, because, and even that person in the child state were like, well, don't you also have a child state? Don't you also go on erotic sometimes? Like, what is it even an issue? And even if I don't cling with you in certain way. What, like, it's okay, they go with somebody that does. Can you not orgasm but by making love? Do you have to have something rapey in your orgasm to orgasm? And if so, go treat your sexuality. So, like I said, very harsh readings, and people trying to dissociate from the fact that they were trying to have one up erotically, or trying to break a heart of someone, by basically pretending that they're into something, that they're like something very weird, and they were ending up that they basically tried to rape a child, expose the child, person in the child state, to erotic content. And this is where, um, this is something that's, and then, I was shown this, and then I see the article about this trafficking victim, and everybody being completely broken, because if they thought what they deal with was a reject, or that they had the one up, that they were in power breaking somebody's heart, which is another form of rapey energies. Basically, they come on dopamine, which requires violence, and they try to take the violence to a sexual emotional level. Okay, neural wise, they're basically coming on dopamine, and that's basically an addiction to cause harm, to try to stay in power. Very likely because something like that was done to them when they were in their child state. So it's very likely people that went through ritual abuse and participated in it, and are still in societies where they think that to not rape is being soft or a loser. Um, Very harsh energy reading. Okay, it's a very painful topic. Mars is squaring Chiron. Chiron here has to do about identity. There is a square to Jupiter, which could be denoting of the child state. Mercury in Saturn sign. Jupiter in Saturn sign. Even Mars in Saturn sign. Moon in Saturn sign. Saturn in Jupiter sign. Saturn in Mercury sign could all denote. And by the way, Saturn turning into Aries could all denote of people that had to adult before they were ready to. That didn't get, and Saturn can denote here at the developmental stage, that was not addressed. So it was something like one person is very well aware of their inner child state and defend and protect that faith, where the other people around are basically acting this way out of basically being grown to think that well nourished and safe connection, safe relation that is safe and free, secure attachment pattern is being soft and a loser. Okay, and again, very harsh reading. It puffs a bubble, um, but it can also open. It can also be an existential crisis with Mars square Chiron here, that invites people to look at those things. It does break everything what people thought about society. Again, it's a normal thing for people that have raped. And again, if somebody doesn't acknowledge somebody's child state or inner child state, doesn't honor it, doesn't protect it, doesn't have the boundary in the face of that, it usually means that they don't have it with their own inner child. Okay, kind of like the Me Too, when the women said the Me Too went too far. So in some cases, they were basically a Ghislaine Maxwell, but in some other cases, they were simply denying their own rape, and that's basically caused them to project it outward, because it was so difficult to deal with the existential crisis that come with it. And so people are usually, I can say that when I went through spiritual rape, I was just, my coping mechanism was say, hey, okay, well, something was missing for me here. They said, why? I said, love. And I said it without love, as I don't. And so, uh, and this was my coping mechanism. It's like, hey, that's not the sex that I'm looking for. And basically, that was both as a victim a coping mechanism, because I didn't want to get into like, you're a rapist, you're this, you're that. I'm like, hey, that's not what I want. I cannot commit to that. It's not what I'm looking for in a person. And I was like, hey, I said that I'm the type of person that, if I have sexuality, is to be with love and not those things that are like alien to me. Um, when basically they were violating some of the boundary that they already knew, and again, each person has their own problems. It's not about being a judge. It's not about execution. Not about that. It's just like zero rape society. But just the same as I have had this coping mechanisms, other people had this coping mechanisms, and they could say, yeah, that person was a jerk when they were severely emotionally and sexually violent, and that's something that is serious. It's not something a person just walks, just walks. I don't know, separates from their girlfriends and rapes people. Like, not even that story is real. There's something in the childhood experience that is way more dramatic. And the people that really want to set it aside as, oh, the person had their heart broken, no, 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 no. They would not take it to sexual violence if they were not sexually violated. And that is, um, okay, that's a shit ton of people that think of themselves as winners when they rape, or at the worst case jerks, and basically they went through some severe sexual trauma as child, or something along that sort, um, or they were, yeah, it's not or. Okay, even those juxtapositions would not have happened without first or second frontier that's to do with sexual violence, even as infants. Okay, which means that that's in the nervous system. We had a conversation with survivors about the astral projection, and um, and I was kind of thinking about, well, the ritual abuse that happens intentionally by psychic attacks versus there are cases where it's absolutely not intentional. I mean, they torture one person, they torture another person, the nervous system is not regulated, and then they take the faces of these two people and harm the third one, that they also torture, and then they cause this chaos so that people will blame one another and not the actual use of dark occult. So this is something that's also happening. Like I said, it's a harsh reading. It's a harsh energy reading. It's a harsh reality. But for those for whom it may resonate, um, it can be eventually a very validating one, because why do I say eventually? If somebody would have told me in 2007 that I was spiritually raped, and that there was both in Israel and in the region of Heidelberg something to do with the red shoes there and and an Epstein here that tried to make people religious and to traffic people they considered good or innocent, then I would say, uh, I don't know. I was talking to this guy. They were weird. I don't know about anything. Okay, that's that's life. I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know, and that's normal. It took more than a decade. 2007. We're almost 20 years, and a shit ton of talismans and energy readings that would tend to completely other things. Like I said, I wasn't looking for a particular solution anymore because there wasn't, nobody was understanding what it is. Um, and I see only in the internet where people begin to share their experiences of with the astral. because this exposes the residues of the rituals that happen to people and have a ripple effect. And that's the point. Those rituals are said to have a ripple effect that affects society. I also want to address another thing. Even in the elite echelons, okay, the gaps between the rituals that they do and the repetitiveness of the rituals are meant to keep people, decision maker people, the people that you don't feel empathy to, okay? The Weffers and the Bildenbergers and all the people we don't normally like. People don't walk in their life and say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry for that billionaire," you know. But they don't have secure attachment style, and they keep it by these rituals so that they will be susceptible to extortion and mind control. They can demonstrate an image of secure attachment as bait. They cannot have consistency around that. If it's new to people, then it means that they are dissociated from other things that happen in the rituals. And according to Anya Wick, a lot of people, Anya Wick was supposed to be dissociated from her rituals. She was supposed to be a part of a media conglomerate. Um, Again, and just like as an astrologer, I take a look at Orpheochus, where people say it's the 13th sign, and everybody's like, no, it's only 12. They don't know astrology. Every time this thing comes up, and then do a talisman dedicated to Orpheochus. Okay. But this is normal to astrology, okay? I said I will always do one-to-one readings. I would never this and that, and lo and behold, I began to do mundane astrology. Um, it's just Uranus. It's Uranus basically does that, and here is the thing. Just like identify that Orpheochus is an energy that people find it difficult to accept, and indeed Orpheochus is basically the rising snake. So the rising snake is considered life energy, and basically the one that burns through the lies of both religion and secularism. It's a thing associated with Mula Nakshatra. So I have Midheaven and Neptune in Orpheochus sign. Um, and yes, there's also the Cestus and so on and so forth. I think that the reason that people like Anya Wick were becoming aware of something that they were supposed to be dissociated from, or people like Annika Lucas, or I even heard somebody that said, I cannot forget my traumas. Um, and and I think that this is because it's a consciousness. It's rising to the surface so that these types of rituals would be changed and would be transformed. It's not rising to shame and blame. It's rising to burn through the lies of our consciousness of what we think wealth is, of what we think relation is, of what we think treason is, and of what we think loyalty is. And it's difficult for society to accept scientific revolutions because it changes the entire way of how we think about something. When I was doing Uranu Beta Per Se talisman, I was thinking about with the expandable children and so on and so forth. I did not know to the detail that within the secret societies, the men rape men and are raped by men and as children, and how important was that where the older people would marry a young child as a part of their, I think it is 33-degree right, I don't know. And this is how the younger, and I'm saying that as a person, the only reason that I did not go to the Masons because they had to keep things secret, and that didn't go well with me. I'm not the person that is fit for that. I have a retrograde Pluto, not a direct Pluto. And so so I was as naive about the secret societies as anyone, and But the people in the lower degrees, they do weird rituals, and I think that they are dissociated from the rituals already in a beginner stage, and then they're supposed to be conscious, but I don't know how like it's something very weird, or they learn that at least they have phases in themselves that for whom they get rewarded for evil and tortured and killed for kindness. So and that allows extortion. It basically preserves extortion calls and pedophilia altogether. The Marc Dutroux that was kidnapping children was something that was new to the network at this time, because they were going by bloodline, and then he was bringing children, just like kidnapping them. But of course, they were locating them by blood. Um, um, and that structure, yes, that pertains, of course, to people going missing or cold cases or not cold cases, um, that to actually address them, we need to address that in society. And because if there's a village, let's say, that does these rituals, then when one child going missing, it's very easy to turn to somebody to as a cover up for that. And but the parents of the child might not even know about those rituals because they're just doing other things, or they're not connected that deeply with the religious institutions that are used as infrastructure for the rituals, or they're not in the media echelon. Um, I tried, okay? Or business echelon, you know. And yes, of course, the people that are the therapists, and even for me as an astrologer, I did not do astrology certification. And still, when it was my Pluto square, it was torture, 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 mundane astrology. Okay, that's basically how it went. Um, and then I talked about MK often because I was the one astrologer that talks about MK often and the clothing project. Um, Again, it's not a red pill, blue pill. It is also not an American thing or an Israeli thing. It's a global thing, and it's at the foundation of countries because they need the countries infiltrated. Palestine, 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 Somaliland, any sovereign country, Greenland. They need now, at least Greenland have said in the story, but they'd have to defend themselves, particularly when they go for sovereignty. So if I had astrological considerations for Declaration of Independence, when we talk about sovereign states, it can only be sovereign when it is not funded by extortion cults, human and drug trafficking. And it's not about shame or blame. It's not about, oh, this person is a trafficker, this person. It's not about this person. It's about foundations. And Saturn, Neptune in Aries, I believe, is going to take from the foundations so many things down that were funded by, that were founded, not just funded, founded by those extortion codes. And the distraction here, it's a year-long transit, okay? It's not one day transit, it's a year-long transit. The distraction of the fundamentals. And I'm sure even I'm going to be surprised at to what level of fundamentals is that. Okay, we're already seeing what's happening in Iran, Sol in Aries country, Ali Khamenei, Sol in Aries leader. Okay, um, one of them have Jupiter in the first decan of Aries, and I believe each and every one of the. I, as an astrologer, the only prediction that I have is they'll probably be beyond surprise to what level of fundamentals. It is not just the fundamentalism that is often associated with the West. Okay. Uh, like the chart of the Taliban is on having a midheaven that basically could be used as a ritual sacrifice to save midheavens that are around that Not all meet heavens. Yes. Uh, before I'm tempted to jab. Um, okay, and let's have an anecdote that is um, that is interesting. I woke up today to a video of a person talking about the vacant houses and giving the rates of vacant houses going from 1% in some city in Pennsylvania to Cape Cod, which is, I think, almost 50%, because it's also vacant houses and second summer houses, or winter houses. But this is basically. The conclusion was that maybe the world or US should aspire to be more like Pennsylvania, to which I replied, I think we should aspire to be more like Cape Cod, but with zero homeless. And I had to add a side note, also without the population, WEF don't cheat. So I'll end with that.